David's life is a clear example of the danger of success. When things are going well, when we have money in the bank, when we went for our annual physical and everything checks out. If you're married, you're in that honeymoon stage, your business takes off, or you just had the vacation of your dreams, or whatever it is. When everything is going well and up and to the right, we tend to forget about God. We tend to think that, look what I have done. We tend to let our guard down. That is fertile soil for the spiritual forces of darkness to ravish us.
Welcome to the Extra 10. My name is Ben Cartland, joined here once again by Jason Esposito. Jason, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. I just noticed, Ben, did you get a new shirt? I've never seen you wear that shirt.
Well, okay, sorry. I mean, now that we're on, like, putting the podcast on YouTube,
there's a lot of pressure.
I have to, like, think about what I'm wearing.
You're like,
and normally, what I wear is
no more salmon shirts,
just golf polo.
I got a new shirt. I got Costco. I was going through Costco.
Now I'm very self-conscious.
No, I was going through Costco. I love the clothes at Costco.
Yeah, I'm gonna get.
This is a Costco shirt.
I'm gonna get you a bowling ball to go with that shirt.
I know it's a Costco.
Maybe
it's
some
a little big.
Shoes.
I'm always a medium. That's the problem with Costco is you can't try it on ahead of time. But the return policy is amazing.
It's a button up. It's a button up shirt. Just put it on over whatever shirt you were wearing.
It's a little baggy.
Try it on.
It's a little baggy, but I like it.
To each their own. But yes, I mean, no, it's not a new shirt. No, I haven't worn this shirt to work. It's not. But after we record the podcast, I am leaving for the day. So,
well, this is
I wear what I want.
This is a new shirt for me.
Well, good. Well, you look very sharp today. Anyway, so hey, we kicked off a new sermon series,
The House of David.
The House of David. Mm-hmm. So just totally ripping off Amazon and naming your series about David.
Fact check. We have a couple of fact checks today. I don't know if that's a fact check, but I write the sermon series in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote the series for like this next 25-26 school year, starting in September, this past spring.
Yep.
So you got to go back another spring when I wrote. That's right.
Yeah.
And sometimes the names will change and series will change, but I try to map out a year and then the teaching team fleshes out the details. Yeah. So I wrote that series before I knew about the Amazon House of David.
So you were kind of you were ahead of your time.
I don't know about that, but I'm just reporting the news.
You had the name first, I guess. Maybe
well, there's nothing new under the sun. That's in the Bible. Yeah, actually, there's a whole interpretive path for that, but we won't get into that today.
We'll stick with David.
That's good.
And so what are we doing in this sermon series, The House of David?
Do we want the second fact check?
Well,
later. We'll do that.
Yeah, we can. We'll
get that.
There.
That'll be a teaser. We'll get there.
Yeah. I mean,
we're just looking at a few of the songs that he wrote and the poems, which we call them Psalms.
Right.
And so we're looking at, I think 5 or 6, and David wrote these Psalms, and they would sing them just like we sing songs in worship. And we might sing a song by Chris Tomlin, that's old.
That is old.
Or Jen Johnson, or I don't know,
Yeah.
Elevation or Hillsong,
Yep.
or Martin Luther, A Mighty Fortress.
Oh,
that's a classic.
Okay.
I love A Mighty Fortress. That's a great song.
And so so I know some of the Psalms are songs.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of the Psalms were written by David, and those are what we are specifically looking at in this sermon series, are the Psalms that were written by David. But there are also a slew of Psalms that are written by a variety of authors, some unknown.
Right.
And so in general, though, just for summary, like, what are the Psalms?
Poems.
Okay. And then and why, I mean, like, I guess like Psalms is such like a core, I feel like such a core part of the Bible. Like, people really like rely on the Psalms because they do such a great job of kind of expressing the emotion of following God, I guess, if in Ben's quick summary. And so, like, why are the Psalms so important? And then why specifically are, the Psalms written by David, what we're focusing on here?
It's interesting. The older I get, and you were commenting on how old I look earlier.
I did not.
No, I know. Well, you triggered how old I look when I look in the mirror.
Just because I say something that triggers your insecurity does not mean that I made a comment on it.
Oh man, we need to do a whole podcast on triggers. But what were we talking about?
Psalms.
Yes.
And what the Psalms are, and why they're important, and why we're focusing on
the older I get, the more that I appreciate them and I go to them. In fact, this weekend I'm preaching on Psalm 19, and my life verse is in Psalm 19, which I'm not going to talk about today because we'll talk about it next week.
Fair enough.
But they just nourish the soul at a different level. So you have all different types of literature, and I know we've talked about this in other podcasts, that you have narrative and you have parables and you have apocalyptic literature and eschatological literature, and you have wisdom literature, and we have poem, and we have all of these types of literature in the Bible, and they all are used by God in a unique way to encourage us, to challenge us, to convict us, to heal us. And the Psalms have this unique ability to tap into the emotional state of being human. And when David writes, so back to kind of David, like David was on the mountaintop in the valley. He experienced everything. In the sermon that I listened to by Dan here at Germantown, he talked about this idea that David had 10,000 men pursuing him to kill him, for 10 years. And that's a problem. And so David's writing during the valleys, but he's also the king. He's also the anointed one. He's also this great warrior and this great poet. And so David is such a great study, specifically the Psalms, because we always find ourselves in three basic places in life. We're either on the mountaintop, things are up and to the right. Our stocks are well, our grass is mowed. They're two very different things. Whatever, everything, the kids seem to be, getting good grades. We just had that great vacation. The car made it to work. Sometimes I'm just thankful that the car didn't break down on my long commute. Actually, you have a long commute. I don't. Yes. And, everything's up and to the right. You're on the mountaintop or you're in the valley. You lost your job. You can't make the medical payment. You just got a really scary, diagnosis at the doctor's appointment, those types of things. But most of life is just kind of on the plains, another day, take the garbage out, turn the lights off, make sure the AC is not cranking literally 24/7 that is right now with the heat. And so the Psalms really take us through these seasons where David was on the mountains, he was in the valleys, or it's just the normal rhythm of life. And it tags into how we are as human beings.
That's one thing, that I really appreciated about, Psalm 18 that Dan shared this weekend, or that was preached on by all the campus, or by all the teaching team, Pastor Dan specifically here at the Germantown campus, is like Psalm 18 kind of like runs the gamut of it. It speaks to like all the different, phases of life. It's kind of like Psalms in a nutshell, it is Psalm 18. And, it was definitely very challenging to think about how I respond to God at all different phases of like my life. Like you said, whether you're on the mountaintop, in the plains, or in the valleys. And how challenging it is in all of those different phases to acknowledge God and acknowledge your place with God, no matter where you are.
Yeah, one of the things that is so crucial to highlight in this series, and Dan did bring it up in the Germantown sermon, and Marcus preached at Sussex and Tony preached at North Shore, is the power of music and song. When we gather together as a community of faith and we worship at Germantown, at Sussex, at North Shore, we're not just checking a box. We're not just, that's just what church does. You sing 2 or 3 or 4, depending on your tradition, songs. You have songs before a message. You have a song after the message, or you have a message and all these kind of things. Right. But there's power in music. And I can think about songs that I hear on the radio or that I'm streaming, and then it takes me back. There's certain Billy Joel songs. I was a huge Billy Joel fan, in high school. I was also a fan of lots of other music, but there's certain songs, like my senior year song. We had a song. I don't know if, did you have a song your senior year?
If we did, I don't remember it.
Yeah. So we had a song and I remember it. And when that song comes out, it's a Billy Joel song. I'm like, oh, that's my senior year. That was our prom song. That was our graduation song, that kind of thing. So music is powerful and it moves us. So even if you're not a singer, even if you're not a musician, even if you come to worship and you're like, here's the music, let's get to the sermon. You know, the sermon isn't the meat. Like the meat is the whole experience. It's the community of faith coming together. It's incarnational, it's embodied, it's a flesh on flesh, life on life. And, because Christ is present in a unique way, the incarnation, God in flesh and blood. He's, just to pause there for a moment, Jesus isn't actually flesh and blood present at the service, but there, where 2 or 3 are gathered. So you have this sense of of mystery to the gathering. And then we are singing songs together. We're listening to a sermon. We're reading scripture. We're praying. We're greeting each other. All these different elements. Like there's power in that, and there's real power in music. So even if you are tone deaf, even if you don't have a musical note in your body, it still is powerful to experience that, to sing. It doesn't matter if you can't keep, a tune or you can't sing a tune.
Well, and so,
but this is the second fact. I'm getting there. I'm getting there, man. The second fact check. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're getting to the second fact check. I want to touch. I want to make sure that we get into that because we have one correction.
Right. So you're a drummer.
Sermon.
Man, everybody knows that.
Yeah.
You're very musical, Ben. Do you sing? I know you play drums.
There was a time.
Yeah.
I did the musicals and stuff in high school. I was Jean Valjean in our high school rendition
of
Les Mis.
That's big time.
Yeah, I mean,
did you hit those notes?
Well,
I want to hear that.
I did. Yeah, that was a long time ago, man.
Yeah, I love Les Mis. It's one of my favorite Broadway shows. I'm gonna go see it. It's coming to Milwaukee.
Oh, is it? Yeah, it's great.
We got tickets. It's so powerful.
But rumor has it, or at least, according to Pastor Dan here, you're not a very good singer. And I think we want to dispel that rumor here.
We need to dispel this. So because we want to fact check all the sermons and we want to make sure we're accurate in our exegetical, analysis of the biblical text, but also other things as well.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, actually, and we'll get to that. It was, long time ago when some might know Crossway Church was called First Alliance Church. Mm-hmm. And it might have been like year 1. And I said something in a sermon, and a guy who is very, very astute and very intelligent individual came up to me. He goes, "That's actually a myth online." And he gave me a link to a website to, discover, what's myth, what's real. No. I thought it was really good. I was like, it really challenged me. I was like, I got to be accurate. Like it's important, not just how we handle the scriptures, but the facts that we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, so Dan was very kind, talked about, me as his pastor and his boss. And I really appreciate that. And I'm so thankful for the team. We have an incredible team and really thankful for what God is doing in and through the team at Crossway Church. But then he said, "You don't want to sit or stand next to me." And so I realized at that moment that Dan's never stood next to me. Not that I'm like amazing or anything, but I used to sing. I was in One Hope, a group in college that did a little bit of touring, a little recording. I was in our men's chorale. I did musicals in high school. I sang in several musicals as well. Amy and I sang together at a wedding, and at our wedding reception, we met at the Lion King movie, the original Lion King, the animated movie, and I sang a solo to her at our wedding reception.
Wow! So, Can You Feel the Love Tonight?
Yes.
That's
I did the Elton John version.
Can you give us a little taste?
So I didn't do my warm-ups. Like I had voice lessons, all of those things. So yes, I used to be a singer.
Well, very nice.
So I need to talk to Dan today.
Yeah, get that squared away.
And get that, hey, come on. Just like fact check.
So that's what the closed office closed door meeting.
There was no yelling or anything like that. You better get your facts right. So, but it's important that we're accurate in the sermon. So that's more of a funny one.
But yes, of course. But going back to kind of what you were saying about kind of the worship experience.
It's powerful. It's important.
Both music and sermon as one thing. Yeah. It really, and then tying it into kind of the sermon holistically is, kind of the no matter where you are, engaging that engaging the services like in that way as a full experience of God, both with the music and the sermon and those types of things. And one of the things, and we talked about this a little bit kind of before we hit record here, but it's this idea of the danger of success. And Dan kind of and the pastors kind of brought it up in their conversations or in their sermons. And it's in some ways much easier to lean more heavily on God when you're in the valleys, or even when you're in the plains a little bit, because a lot of times there's a little bit more rhythm when you're in the plains, I guess. There's a little bit more rhythm. Maybe you're just, kind of, you're attending church, you're engaging the word, the grind, that type of stuff, but you're still in it. But when you're on the mountaintop, that, for me, at least personally, is one of the hardest times to rely on God or to acknowledge God, I guess, as much, because it's so easy to, look at, my successes or things that I had done that led me there. And it's not that I'm ignoring God, but I'm just might not be giving God the credit, or I might not be, or I just might not be acknowledging the role that He played in whatever success I had. And so that challenge with, and kind of like we talked about, the danger of success. And I just want to know, what your thoughts were on that a little bit.
That's huge. So go back to David, the author of Psalm 18 and the Psalms we're going to look at in this series. When did he blow up his life? It was in the successes. It's when he slept with Bathsheba and he became a liar, a murderer, a deceiver. And what's interesting is how that chapter begins. It says, when kings go out to war. So David was this great warrior and a great poet, which is, just pause there for a moment. Think about that. Like, he was this warrior king. We're thinking Braveheart, Gladiator, whatever ancient movie that depicts these great warriors. John Wick, that's more modern. Not necessarily recommending any of the movies. I'm just sharing. But all these like warrior leaders, and yet he was also compassionate. He was also intimately connected in friendship with Jonathan. He was a great musician and an author and a poet. Like he was the full package, David. He was an amazing man, and a man after God's own heart, as the scripture says. But when he messed up, he messed up because he didn't recognize the danger of his success. And so he got to this point in his life where he's like, I don't need to go out to war, because in those days, kings would lead their men in battle. And that's what David did. But when kings go out to war, he didn't go. He stayed back. He went on the roof. Years ago, I preached this sermon, get off the roof. And to students and adults, this idea, like David was on the roof and he had let down his guard. He's like, somebody else can do that. I did my time. The kingdom is safe. I can kick back, put my feet up. Yeah. And that's when the whole thing blows up. And so David's life is a clear example of the danger of success. When things are going well, when we have money in the bank, when we went for our annual physical and everything checks out, all the numbers on your blood work, if you're married, you're in that honeymoon stage, or you're married 30 years and things are just great and you love your spouse, or if your business takes off, or you just had the vacation of your dreams, or whatever it is, the team, the Brewers are doing well and you're a big Brewer fan. When everything is going well and up and to the right, we tend to forget about God. We tend to think that, look what I have done. We tend to let our guard down. And that is fertile soil for the spiritual forces of darkness to ravish us, and for temptation to seep in. So we need to be extra careful, and we need to be extra attentive when things are going well. And in fact, I find in my own story, my own life, that When I'm in the valleys, when things are rough, like I'm a prayer warrior, I'm reading scripture,
Right.
I'm talking to my Christian counselor, my mentors, my Christian friends. Amy and I are having rich conversation. When things are hard, I'm like, oh God, I need you. But when things are going well, when church is growing, when people are being discipled, when kids are going to camp and lives are being transformed and giving is strong and the building's getting done on time and we're right there, all these things, like it's so easy for me to let down my guard. And it's in those moments where Satan comes in and he guts us. That's what happened with David. And so a special warning label, if things are going well right now, that's when you really need to lean into your spiritual disciplines, into dependence on God.
And so I guess I want to lean on that a little bit harder, and it's I guess a little bit of advice for people that are in a good season, in a mountaintop, like you said, like things are being taken care of, like kids are healthy, families healthy, bills are being paid, lawns are being mowed. I don't know what you said
for
earlier.
You. That's an up and to the right. Like you're Ben, and we've talked about this. I have lawn envy.
Yeah. Well, like I said, like I had my lawn had a rough winter, so I'm less than thrilled.
I have this. I cannot get grass to grow in this one spot. Anyways, keep going. Back. Whoop. I got to dig it out.
Yeah,
dig the whole thing out.
But anyway,
new soil.
So things are going well. What advice do you have for people in that time? Because I've been through times like that as well, and you're absolutely right. Like that's when things can really take a sideways turn, kind of abruptly. Is when things are well and you let your guard down. And so if somebody is in a season that things are going well, what advice do you have for them in order to help prevent that from happening?
It's a word that all of us love: discipline.
Okay.
Spiritual discipline.
Yeah.
Like that's, I mean, it's not fancy, but the spiritual disciplines, prayer, solitude, simplicity, scripture memorization, scripture study, scripture meditation, community, serving, all the spiritual disciplines are critical. And when we're engaging those disciplines and they're part of the regular rhythm of our life, whether we're on the mountaintops or on the plains. And again, the plains are also really dangerous because we're just kind of in the grind. Like we're just like it's time to, I remember an old Dunkin' Donuts commercial, which is now rebranded Dunkin'.
Yep.
Growing up on the East Coast, time to make the donuts. And I don't know if that was here in the Midwest, but the donut guy would wake up super early in the morning. Yep. It's dark out and he'd be like really tired, time to make the donut, just the grind.
Yep.
So engage the spiritual discipline. Make sure that you have regular time with the Lord, whatever that looks like. It could be in the evening, midday, morning. It could be, reading through some classic spiritual books, devotional books.
Yeah.
It could be, reading through scripture or a 1-year Bible reading plan. It could be what I do. Like right now, I'm doing a deep dive into the Sermon on the Mount. So I'm reading and rereading the Sermon on the Mount, and I'm reading other books about the Sermon on the Mount. Whatever that looks like for you. It could be a prayer walk. I love prayer walks or time. Sometimes I'll come in the morning and now the construction workers are here way early.
Before,
I don't know. They get here like, I don't know what time they're here. Like they sleep overnight or something. I don't know. I'm like, wow, they're here already working. They start really early. But I'll just drive into the parking lot and I'll park, in the corner. And now I can't, right now they're extending the parking lot. So I can't do that right now. But I'll just sit there. It's just quiet. There's nobody here, but right now there are.
Right.
But, and I love that. Or in the winter time, if I can get here early, just walking around the building and just that quiet time of listening to God and talking with God. So engage the spiritual disciplines. And there's so many reasons. If you're like, well, I don't know about the classic book on the spiritual disciplines is by Richard Foster, and the celebration of discipline. It's not, flashy. Maybe it might not be the most enjoyable book you ever read, but it's a very important book that I would encourage every Christian to read. Celebration of Discipline. There's Dallas Willard wrote a book, The Spirit of Disciplines. John Ortberg wrote a book about The Life You've Always Wanted, which is another look at the disciplines. Mark Buchanan, one of my favorite modern books, wrote a book, The Life You've Always Wanted, which is on spiritual disciplines. And so there's lots of books out there that you can read. I know John Mark Comer's written some stuff on the spiritual disciplines. There's a lot out there.
And what it kind of reminds me of, and hearing you speak, is something that Pastor Dan brought up in his sermon about like really asking yourself the question of like, where do you find your peace? And because what you settle on each and every day, what gives you like comfort at the end of the day, at least this is what I was thinking when when he was preaching, is really what your foundation is going to be, whether in the highs or the lows. And that was really challenging to me, is like, where at the end of the day, when I lay my head down, and if I'm anxious, what am I anxious about? But if I'm not anxious, what am I at peace about? Am I at peace about and taking comfort in the fact that I am right with God, and that, God has provided for me that day? Or is it, I got the lawn mowed, or I ticked that box today, or I was able to pay that bill today, or I was, and that was really, really challenging for me as I process that, is to really ask myself the question of where do I find my peace? And I think that speaks directly into kind of the activistic part of that, is the spiritual disciplines as you're talking through it. It was just really, that was something that I'm still chewing on, a little bit of cud that I have to continue to chew on for the next few weeks, and really, challenge myself and find, the way to bring myself to truly finding my peace when I lay my head down every night, my peace, and I rest because of God and nothing else.
Well, I actually think it's more of a mixed bag. There is, I'll mow the lawn. There's nothing like mowing the lawn, since we've talked about the lawn a few times. And at the end, just looking back and like, it's done.
Yeah.
Or this past, I got a chainsaw. I'm so excited about my chainsaw.
Wow. Is it battery? Or
it is a battery. Everything's battery. I'm doing the whole battery thing.
Good,
like I've completely converted all my yard tools to battery. I have one more coming. And there's some bigger limbs that I've needed to cut down. There's some logs on the side of my house, like just a lot of that kind of work, which there's just something about that, because maybe it's because of the type of vocation I'm in as a pastor, that, I went out, I cut a bunch of logs, I stacked them. It was warm out, the sun, everything. Like there was this delight in that. And that's not bad. I think it's really important for us to recognize that there might be, and I know you love working in the yard, or maybe you have an incredible date night and you go out and you eat at just a really good restaurant, and you have great surf and turf, or whatever kind of lasagna. I always go to lasagna, is like my fallback, whatever, or pizza, and you're like, oh, that was just a good time. We have good food, and with someone that I care about deeply and love. And like that's rich. That's part of the beauty and the wonder of God's creation. And so when we think about this idea of God delighting in us, that is at its core, because there might be someone listening and they're like, there's nothing going well. Like, I can't pay my bills. I have no money. I'm a slave to debt. I'm just like weighed down by debt. I have a major surgery that I'm facing. My kids are wayward. Like life is, I'm watching the news a lot and I'm just freaked out, which reduce your news watching. That's free for everybody today. Just reduce it. Like be aware, but don't be obsessive. And, this idea that at the end of the day, as you were saying, that we can know that God delights in us because we are fearfully and wonderfully made. God delights in me and delights in you because we are created in the image and likeness of God. God delights in us as Christ followers because we are his family. We are children of God, and our eternity is secure. So there is just the purity of that delight. But I also believe that God gives us good things. It's in Scripture, and that we can experience his delight through something as simple as I took a couple hours and I cut a bunch of logs, and there was this sense of just working with my hands and completion and in God's creation. So, but we are comforted, we are fueled for another day to face the highs, the plains, and the lows by recognizing God's delight in us, in the beauty and the wonder of existing as human beings that he's created in his creative order.
Well, this is The Extra 10. My name is Ben Carlin, here with Jason Esposito. Jason, thanks for stopping by today, man.
Have a good day.